Alright, good morning everyone. We are here with break 463. This is part 1, which will be the retail case, but we also have the 26 League Hero starter case with 40 starter packs and the bonus 26 League Heroes hobby box, as well as the 26 sticker album and box combo. The bonuses get randomised at the end of the break between all 17 teams, with getting sent out with their break cards. Our team list for this one: Broncos, Joel Hardie; Raiders, Joel Hardie; Bulldogs, Rod Staples; Sharks, James Mathews; Dolphins, George Grispos; Titans, Scott McBryde; Manly, Chris Hughes; Storm, Scott McBryde; Knights, Scott McBryde; Cowboys, Stephen Casey; Eels, Daryl Barton; Panthers, Craig Milson; Rabbitohs, Stephen Casey; Dragons, Warren Stoddart; Roosters, Joel Hardie; Warriors, Peter Lowe; Tigers, Brienne McLaughlin. Alright, before we get started, we have a new Pick the Score giveaway just listed. We have a new break just listed and a new team raz for Sharks in break 464. Yep. Which leaves Dragons as the last team in that one. So plenty going on, and to be a part of it and to see where it's all happening, you've got to be in the Facebook group. So make sure you join. Let's bring up the YouTube chat. Team list. And let's get stuck in. So I'm definitely feeling a lot better now over the weekend. So we're going to get into the case. We're going to start there. We'll see how we feel. We might just continue on, but doing it like this gives me that opportunity. If I'm starting to struggle and need a break, well, we'll call it quits after the retail case and come back in half an hour and finish off the starter case. It just gives me a chance to have a coffee and stretch my legs and come back and get it done. Alright, well, we have the bonuses that I mentioned sitting here. The hobby box, the sticker box, as well as the sticker album, which also has the 5 bonus sticker packs in it. Let's get the case open. Get these boxes out. We are currently looking for Jared P92 from the tipping comp. If he can contact us and confirm his information. He is one of 2 top tippers this week. And I might have the wrong person, but I believe Nathan Von Deest. I'm pretty sure I recognise his team name along with Nathan V. I'm pretty confident in that one, but if not, Nathan V, make sure you get in contact with us and confirm your information. And those 2 top tippers have the choice either to split the $50 gift card, or we can randomise it and have one lucky winner. Alright. Alright, they're ready. Let's go. Box number 1. Die cuts Regan Campbell Gillard for the Titans. Luminous Brian Kelly for Titans. Red Triumph Ezra Mam for the Broncos. Luminous Bailey Simonson for the Eels. Game Breakers Patrick Carrigan for the Broncos. Luminous Jesse Southwell for the Knights. Bang Matt Burton for the Bulldogs. Luminous Luciano Leilua for the Dragons. League Heads Mitchell Barnett for the Warriors. Luminous Tony Staggs for Broncos. Game Breakers Ben Trbojevic for Manly. Luminous Asai Papali'i for Panthers. League Heads Dream Buller for the Tigers. Luminous Jacob Carraz for the Bulldogs. Game Breakers Alex Seyfarth for the Tigers. Luminous Alex Seyfarth for the Tigers. Gladiators Damien Cook for the Dragons. Number 28. Oops. We almost missed the sleeve. More importantly, the number. Keon Kolomatangi for the Rabbitohs. League Heads Herbie Farmworth for the Dolphins. Luminous Ali Latua for the Warriors. Game Breakers Olivia Kernick for the Roosters. Luminous Jordan Ricky for the Broncos. Die cuts Kyle Flanagan for the Dragons. Luminous Jessica Surgis for the Roosters. Get open. League Heads Luke Brooks for Manly. Luminous Mitchell Moses for the Eels. Bang Will Penasini for the Eels. Luminous Harry Grant for Storm. Game Breakers Sebastian Chris for the Raiders. Luminous Renato Militalo for the Sharks. Mercury Lachlan Elias for the Dragons, number 293. Luminous Zach Labert for the Cowboys. Die cut Jai Gray for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Loco Tonga for the Dragons. League Heads Dominic Young for the Knights. Luminous Jacob Saifiti for the Knights. League Heads Murray Talagi for the Cowboys. Luminous Luke Brooks for Manly. Game Breakers Wade Egan for the Warriors. Luminous Isaiah Katoa for Dolphins. League Heads Moses Sulai for the Dragons. Luminous Xavier Savage for the Raiders. Bang Philip Semi for the Titans. Luminous Georgia Hale for the Titans. League Heads Isaiah Yo for Panthers. Luminous Josh Kerr for the Dragons. Die cut Aaron Clark for the Warriors. Luminous Ruben Garrick for Manly. Game Breakers Jermaine Isako for Dolphins. Luminous Mitch Kenny for Panthers. Bang Cameron Munster for Storm. Luminous and Whenua Blake for Sharks. League Heads Tommy Turbo for Manly. Luminous Bailey Haywood for the Bulldogs. Die cut Thomas Jenkins for the Panthers. Luminous Tyson Frizzell for Knights. League Heads Marata Nakor for the Warriors. Luminous Jalen DeGroot for Titans. Bang Braden Trindle for the Sharks. Luminous Corey Horsburgh for the Raiders. Game Breakers Jackson Purdue for the Cowboys. Luminous Cassie Hiku for the Eels. League heads, Jack Williams for the Eels. Luminous, Marky Mark for the Roosters. Red Triumph, Jason Saab for Manly. Luminous, Tom Gilbert for the Dolphins. 3 packets left in our first box. League heads, Ray Stone for the Dolphins. Luminous, Wade Egan for the Warriors. Game Breakers, Mawaki Fotuaika for the Titans. Luminous, Latu Fainu for the Tigers. Alright, last one. Bang, Lehe for Manly. Luminous, Ezra Mam for the Broncos. Gladiators, Tom Gilbert for the Dolphins, number 592. Luminous, Alex Johnston for the Rabbitohs. League heads, Zach Lomax for the Eels. Don't forget to get your tips in, guys. State of Origin Game 2 is included in this round. Malami kick out for the Bulldogs. So just go on ahead and tick Blues for that bonus point for this round. It's a nice easy one. Don't even have to think about it. Game Breakers, Nico Hines for the Sharks. Luminous, Apisai Coruscant for the Tigers. League heads, Phoenix Crossland for the Knights. Luminous, Liam Martin for the Panthers. Game Breakers, Hammer for the Dolphins. Luminous, Scott Drinkwater for the Cowboys. Die cut, Wade Egan for the Warriors. Luminous, Luca Moretti for the Eels. Game Breakers, Hamoli Olika R2 for Manly. Luminous, James Fisher Harris for the Warriors. League heads, Adam Fenua Blake for the Sharks. Luminous, Yasmin Clydesdale for the Knights. Bang, Hugo Savala for the Roosters. Luminous, Val Holmes for the Dragons. League Heads, Tom Gilbert for the Dolphins. Luminous, Big Tino for the Titans. Mitch Kenny for the Panthers. Luminous, Kale Iro for the Sharks. Bang, Jermaine Isako for Dolphins. Luminous, Cody Nikarima for Dolphins. Game Breakers, Nelson Asafa-Solomona for Storm. Luminous, Jason Saab for Manly. League Heads, Lachlan Galvin for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Ryan Pappenhausen for Storm. Game Breakers, Ezra Mam for the Broncos. Luminous, Germat Shabarsky for the Broncos. Die-cut Samula Fainu for the Tigers. Luminous, Jacob Preston for the Bulldogs. League Heads, Regan Campbell Gillard for the Titans. Luminous, Jeremiah Nanai for the Cowboys. Red Triumph for the Roosters. Luminous, Milwaukee Fodawaika for Titans. Game Breakers, Max King for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Keezy Apps for Tigers. Bang, Tony Staggs for the Broncos. Luminous, Cody Walker for the Rabbitohs. League Heads, Angus Crichton for the Roosters. Luminous, Brighton Nickera for the Sharks. Red Triumph, Fanua Pole for the Tigers. Luminous, Kalen Ponga for the Knights. League Heads, Kyle Flanagan for the Dragons. Luminous, Lycan Togia for the Dragons. Game Breakers, Bree Chester for the Cowboys. Luminous Isaac Tago for Panthers. Tommy Dearden for the Cowboys. Luminous Alefiana Campiera for the Titans. Clive Churchill. League heads Sebastian Chris for the Raiders. Luminous Addo Carr for the Eels. Bang Jaden Sewer for the Dragons. Luminous Robert Toya for the Roosters. Game Breakers Sanua Taruva for the Tigers. Luminous Samaima Torfa for the Raiders. League heads Ruben Cotter for the Cowboys. Luminous Tamir Martin for Warriors. Bang Jerome Luai for the Tigers. Luminous Jai Gray for the Rabbitohs. Die cuts Luca Moretti for the Eels. Luminous Reed Marnie for the Cowboys. League heads Dylan Edwards for Panthers. Luminous Damien Cook for the Dragons. Game Breakers Jamie Humphries for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Adam Dewey for the Tigers. Bang Dominic Young for the Knights. Luminous Dominic Young for the Knights. League heads Jai Arrow for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Hamoli Olika Atu for Manly. And Mercury Brian To'o for Panthers, number 141. Luminous Lindsay Collins for the Roosters. And that's box 2 done and dusted. You know, we've now done over 50 26 League Heroes case breaks. With obviously that being some hobby, some retail. Combos like this, we've got the retail case and the retail starter case. Yeah, that's massive. Like, I do believe by now, with traders especially, I don't think we would have done this many breaks, but also we would have been doing smaller breaks by now. And we haven't got that many to go, guys. We are definitely getting low on our stock for breaks. So if you've been thinking about jumping in one, now is the time. Game breakers, Zach Laybutt for the Cowboys. Luminous, Mitchell Moses for the Eels. League heads, Corey Horsburgh for the Raiders. Luminous, Harry Grant for the Storm. Game breakers, Fanua Pole for the Tigers. Luminous, Ronaldo Mulatalo for the Sharks. Bang, Dean Mariner for the Broncos. Luminous, Jacob Saifiti for the Knights. League heads, Nelson Asafa Solomona for Storm. Luminous, Zach Laybutt for the Cowboys. Die cut, Lehe Hopawate for Manly. Luminous, Loco Tonga for the Dragons. Game breakers, Anessa Biddle for the Sharks. Luminous, Luke Brooks for Manly. Bang, Lycan King Togia for the Dragons. Luminous, Asaya Katoa for the Dolphins. League heads, Blake Brayley for the Sharks. Luminous, Xavier Savage for the Raiders. Die cut, Jermaine Isako for the Dolphins. Luminous, Georgia Hale for the Titans. Game breakers, Xavier Willison for the Broncos. Luminous, Josh Kerr for the Dragons. Mercury, Jesse Colhoun for the Sharks, number 194. Luminous, Ruben Garrick for Manly. League heads, Patrick Carrigan for the Broncos. Luminous, Mitch Kenny for Panthers. Game breakers, Tui Kamika for Storm. Luminous, Adam Fanua Blake for the Sharks. Bang, Joash for Eels. Luminous, Bailey Haywood for the Bulldogs. League heads, Jerome Luai for the Tigers. Luminous Tyson Frizzell for the Knights. Die cuts, James Fisher-Harris for the Warriors. Luminous Jalen DeGroot for Titans. Game Breakers, Tolator Koala for Manly. Luminous Corey Horsburgh for the Raiders. League heads, Valami Kickout for the Bulldogs. Luminous Marky Mark for the Roosters. Red Triumph, Alex Johnston for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Tom Gilbert for the Dolphins. Die cut, Moses Leota for the Panthers. Luminous Wade Egan for the Warriors. Game Breakers, Robert Toya for the Roosters. Luminous Latu Finu for the Tigers. League heads, Junior Paulo for the Eels. Luminous Ezra Mam for the Broncos. Premiership predictor right there. Bang. Jesse Aramian for the Sharks. Luminous Tommy Dearden for the Cowboys. Gladiators, Ethan Bullimore for Manly, number 331. Luminous Jai Arrow for the Rabbitohs. League heads, Hamoli Olika-Atu for Manly. Luminous Keanu Kinney for the Titans. Game Breakers, Isaac Tago for Panthers. Luminous Kyle Flanagan for the Dragons. Bang Sanua Taruva for Tigers. Luminous Angelina for the Bulldogs. League heads, Marky Mark for the Roosters. Luminous Zach Lomax for the Eels. Red Triumph for the Dolphins. Luminous Nathan Cleary for Panthers. League Heads Tom Starling for the Raiders. Luminous Jamie Humphries for the Rabbitohs. Game Breakers Dylan Lucas for the Knights. Luminous Billy Walters for the Broncos. League Heads Moses Leota for Panthers. Luminous Joseph Tarpanay for Raiders. Die Cuts Alex Johnston for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Greg Mathews for the Knights. League Heads James Fisher-Harris for the Warriors. Luminous Kulikefu for the Dolphins. And last pack for the box. Bang Xavier Coates for Storm. Luminous Cassie Hiku for the Eels. Alright, that's box 3 done and dusted. Here we go with box number 4. Bang Luke Brooks for Manly. Luminous Jamie Chapman for the Titans. League Heads Connolly Lou for the Dolphins. Luminous Jerome Luai for the Tigers. Game Breakers Balami Kickout for the Bulldogs. Luminous Hudson Young for the Raiders. League Heads Lindsay Smith for Panthers. Luminous Leka Halasima for the Warriors. Game Breakers Tegan Berry for the Dragons. Luminous Hammer Fido for the Dolphins. Die cut Adam Dewey for the Tigers. Luminous Cohen Hess for the Cowboys. Sorry guys. Alright, let's keep going. League Heads Ronaldo Mulatalo for the Sharks. Luminous Nico Hines for the Sharks. Mercury Tolator Koala for Manly, number 260. Luminous Alehe Hopawate for Manly. Game Breakers Bo Fermor for the Titans. Luminous Morgan Smithies for the Raiders. League Heads Gerhamat Shabarsky for the Broncos. Luminous Dean Mariner for the Broncos. Bang Jaden Campbell for the Titans. Luminous Isabel Kelly for the Roosters. League Heads Jacob Saifiti for the Knights. Luminous Nelson Asofa Solomona for Storm. Die cuts Sean Bloor for the Storm. Luminous Alex Jodster for the Rabbitohs. Game Breakers Morgan Smithies for the Raiders. Luminous Valami Kickout for the Bulldogs. Gladiators Luca Moretti for the Eels, number 235. Luminous Apasai Coruscant for the Tigers. League Heads Luke Metcalf for the Warriors. Luminous Liam Martin for Panthers. Die cuts Jake Clifford for the Cowboys. Luminous Scott Drinkwater for the Cowboys. Game Breakers Joash for the Eels. Luminous Luca Moretti for the Eels. Bang Isaiah Katoa for Dolphins. Luminous James Fisher Harris for the Warriors. League Heads Will Penasini for the Eels. Luminous Yasmin Clydesdale for the Knights. Die cuts Ethan Bullimore for Manly. Luminous Val Holmes for the Dragons. League Heads James Tedesco for the Roosters. Luminous Big Tino for the Titans. Game breakers, James Tedesco for the Roosters. Luminous, Kale Iro for the Sharks. Bang Mitchell Moses for the Eels. Luminous Cody Nikarima for the Dolphins. Red Triumph Bradman Best for the Knights. Luminous Jason Saab for Manly. League Heads Luciano Leilua for the Dragons. Luminous Ryan Pappenhausen for Storm. Bang Falago for Storm. Luminous Gahamat Shabarsky for the Broncos. Game breakers Asaya Katoa for the Dolphins. Luminous Jacob Preston for the Bulldogs. Die cut Asaya Yongi for the Eels. Luminous Jeremiah Nanai for the Cowboys. League Heads Brian Kelly for the Titans. Luminous Keezy Apps for the Tigers. Red Triumph for the Tigers, Jerome Luai. Luminous Cody Walker for the Rabbitohs. Game breakers Appy Nichols for the Warriors. Luminous Brighton Nickera for the Sharks. League Heads Ethan Strange for the Raiders. Luminous Kalen Ponga for the Knights. Game breakers Jerome Luai for the Tigers. Luminous Lycan King Togia for the Dragons. League Heads Cohen Hess for the Cowboys. Luminous Isaac Tago for Panthers. Bang Blaze Talagi for Panthers. And Luminous Alefiana Kampiera for Titans. And that's box 4 done and dusted. Only thing to do is to get stuck into box number 5. Game breakers, Matt Burton for the Bulldogs. Luminous Tamale for the Raiders. Die cuts, Angus Crichton for the Roosters. Luminous Emma Veron for the Sharks. League heads, Ezra Mam for the Broncos. Luminous Samula Finu for the Tigers. Game breakers, Jalen de Groot for Titans. Luminous Ray Stone for the Dolphins. Oh, gold triumph. Luminous Stephen Crichton for the Bulldogs. League head, Apasite Coruscant for the Tigers. Luminous Philip Semi for the Titans. Bang Dylan Lucas for the Knights. Luminous Patrick Carrigan for the Broncos. Game breakers, Patricia for the Warriors. Luminous Dane Gagai for the Knights. League heads, Lehe Hopawate for Manly. Luminous Connor Watson for the Roosters. Gladiators, Phoenix Crossland for the Knights, number 493. Moses Sulai for the Dragons. League heads, Joash for Eels. Luminous Dylan Walker for the Eels. Game breakers, Corey Horsburgh for the Raiders. Luminous Zahara Temera for the Raiders. Bang Cody Nikarima for the Dolphins. Yes, thank you. Morning. Definitely feeling a hell of a lot better. Still a slight runny nose and a little bit of a cough, but yes, definitely 100% compared to the last week. Brian Totter, Luminous for the Panthers. League heads, William Kennedy for the Sharks. Luminous Luke Lawlilly for the Tigers. Mercury Jermaine McEwen for the Knights, number 379. Murray Talagi, Luminous for the Cowboys. Game Breakers, Terrell May for the Tigers. Luminous, Chanel Harris Tavita for the Warriors. Ben Hunt, die cut for the Broncos. Luminous, Blake Brayley for the Sharks. Die cut, Scott Drinkwater for the Cowboys. Luminous, Daniel Tupou for the Roosters. Bang Tamale for the Raiders. Luminous, Appy Nichols for the Warriors. League Heads, Harry Grant for the Storm. Luminous, Carl Lawton for the Cowboys. Game Breakers, Anita Maynard for the Dragons. Luminous, Fanua Pole for the Tigers. League Heads, Keon for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Cameron McInnes for Sharks. Triumph, Val Holmes for the Dragons. Luminous, Trent LaRoe for Storm. Bang, Damien Cook for the Dragons. Luminous, Jamal Fogarty for Manly. League Heads, Greg Mathews for the Knights. Luminous, AJ Brimson for the Titans. Game Breakers, Gehamat Shabarsky for the Broncos. Luminous, Marata Nakor for the Warriors. Apasai Coruscant for the Tigers. Luminous, Moses Leotta for the Panthers. League Heads, Asai Katoa for the Dolphins. Luminous, Jermaine Hopgood for the Eels. Oh, get open. Game Breakers, Asaya Yongi for the Eels. Luminous, Mackenzie Wheel for the Cowboys. Bang Teddy for the Roosters. Luminous, Jaden Sewer for the Dragons. A red Triumph for the Eels. Luminous Dylan Lucas for the Knights. League Heads Milwaukee Fodawaker for the Titans. Luminous Lachlan Galvin for the Bulldogs. Game Breakers Jai Gray for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Adam Reynolds for the Broncos. League Heads Val Holmes for the Dragons. Luminous Hugo Savala for Roosters. Bang Adam Reynolds for the Broncos. Luminous Falago for Storm. Last packet for box number 5. League Heads Bailey Haywood for the Bulldogs. Luminous Brendan Smith for the Rabbitohs. Here we go, box number 6. Game Breakers Cody Walker for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Philip Semi for the Titans. League Heads Sam Walker for the Roosters. Luminous Patrick Carrigan for the Broncos. Bang Moses Sulite for the Dragons. Luminous Dane Gagai for the Knights. Game Breakers Luke Metcalf for the Warriors. Luminous Connor Watson for the Roosters. League Heads Jacob Carraz for the Bulldogs. Luminous Moses Sulai for the Dragons. League Heads Fanua Pole for the Tigers. Luminous Dylan Walker for the Eels. Die Cuts Sua Wong for the Roosters. Luminous Zahara Temera for the Raiders. Game Breakers Apasai Coruscant for the Tigers. Luminous Brian To'o for Panthers. Bang Reese Walsh for Broncos. Luminous Luke Lolili for Tigers. Game Breakers Alehe Hopawate for Manly. Luminous Fletcher Sharp for the Knights. Bang Phoenix Crossland for the Knights. Luminous Xavier Willison for the Broncos. League Heads Jake Trebojevic for Manly. Luminous Tommy Turbo for Manly. Payne Haas die cut for Broncos. Luminous Latrell Mitchell for the Rabbitohs. League Heads Reese Walsh for the Broncos. Luminous Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs. Bang Terrell May for the Tigers. Luminous Roger Tuivasa Sheck for the Warriors. Die cuts Sebastian Chris for the Raiders. Luminous Lindsay Smith for Panthers. League Heads Jaden Sewer for the Dragons. Luminous Jack Bostock for Dolphins. Cheers. Bang Daniel Tupou for the Roosters. Luminous Tegan Berry for the Dragons. Game Breakers Tiana Penatani Gray for the Sharks. Luminous Tiana Penatani Gray for the Sharks. League Heads Dylan Walker for the Eels. Luminous Terrell May for the Tigers. Mercury Billy Smith for the Roosters, number 425. Luminous Jack Williams for the Eels. League Heads Fletcher Sharp for the Knights. Luminous Stefano Utakamanu for Storm. Game Breakers Bradman Best for the Knights. Luminous KO Weeks for the Raiders. League heads, Jackson Purdue for the Cowboys. Luminous Beau Fermor for the Titans. Die cut Tyson Frizzell for the Knights. Luminous Jason Tormalolo for the Cowboys. League heads, Keanu Kinney for the Titans. Luminous Alex 12 for the Tigers. Being Brian Kelly for the Titans. Luminous Tyrone Wishart for Storm. Game Breakers Tom Dearden for the Cowboys. Luminous Kira Dibb for the Cowboys. Triumph Latrell Mitchell for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Braden Trindle for the Sharks. League heads Cody Walker for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Murray Talagi for Cowboys. Game Breakers Hugo Savala for the Roosters. Luminous Chanel Harris Tavita for the Warriors. Red Triumph Bronson Sherry for the Bulldogs. Luminous Blake Brayley for the Sharks. Fourth last packet for box number 6. Die cut Herbie Farmworth for the Dolphins. Luminous Tui Kamika for Storm. League heads Brighton Nickera for the Sharks. Luminous Jake Chabuvic for Manly. Game Breakers KO Weeks for the Raiders. Luminous Sean Kepi for the Rabbitohs. Gladiators Jacob Saifiti for the Knights. Number 98. Luminous White for the Roosters. And that's box 6 done and dusted. box number 7. Die cuts Dane Gagai for the Knights. Luminous Tui Kamika for Storm. League heads Scott Drinkwater for the Cowboys. Luminous Jake Trbojevic for Manly. Red Triumph Harry Grant for Storm. Luminous Sean Kepe for the Rabbitohs. Game Breakers Max Plath for the Dolphins. Luminous Tegan Berry for Dragons. Alex Johnston for the Rabbitohs. Luminous White for the Roosters. Bang Ethan Strange for the Raiders. Luminous Jack Bostock for Dolphins. Game Breakers Scott Drinkwater for the Cowboys. Luminous Lindsay Smith for Panthers. Red Triumph Alefiana Campiera for Titans. Got a few hits. Luminous Fletcher Sharp for the Knights. League heads Dylan Lucas for the Knights. Luminous Xavier Willison for Broncos. I'm going to quickly take this jumper off. Die cuts Tom Gilbert for the Dolphins. Luminous Tommy Turbo for Manly. League heads Jermaine Isako for Dolphins. Luminous Latrell Mitchell for the Rabbitohs. Game Breakers Braden Trindle for the Sharks. Luminous Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs. Bang Isaac Tago for the Panthers. RTS Luminous for the Warriors. League Heads Big Tino for Titans. Luminous Tiana Penatoni Grey for the Sharks. Game Breakers Tommy Turbo for Manly. Luminous Terrell May for Tigers. Die Cuts Ethan Sanders for Raiders. Luminous Jack Williams for the Eels. League Heads. So don't knock over the pile of base cards. Clinton Gutherson for the Dragons. Luminous Stefano Utikamanu for Storm. Game Breakers Sophie Holliman for the Raiders. Luminous Ko Weeks for the Raiders. League Heads Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs. Luminous Tomalolo for the Cowboys. Game Breakers Billy Walters for the Broncos. Luminous Alex 12 for Tigers. Murray Talagi Bang for the Cowboys. Tyron Wishart Luminous for Storm. League Heads Ben Hunt for the Broncos. Luminous Kirat Dib for the Cowboys. Die Cuts Falago for Storm. Luminous Braden Trindle for the Sharks. Bang Tyron Wishart for Storm. Luminous Sam Verrills for the Titans. Game Breakers Connor Watson for the Roosters. Luminous Braden Best for the Knights. Die Cuts Ruben Garrick for Manly. Luminous Junior Paulo for the Eels. League heads, Samula Fainu for the Tigers. Luminous Felice Kafusi for the Dolphins. Game breakers, Tyron Wishart for Storm. Luminous Ethan Strange for Manly. We're up to 8 to go in box number 7. League heads, Ruben Garrick for Manly. Luminous Lachlan Ilias for Dragons. Bang Jalen de Groot for Titans. Luminous Billy Smith for Roosters. Game breakers, Jack Whiten for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Max King for the Bulldogs. League heads, Mitchell Moses for the Eels. Luminous Lyson Albert Jones for the Warriors. Mercury Jacob Carraz for the Bulldogs, number 417. Luminous Reese Walsh for the Broncos. League heads, Nico Hines for the Sharks. Luminous Tolator Koala for Manly. Bang William Kennedy for the Sharks. Luminous Dylan Edwards for Panthers. Gladiators, Adam Fanua Blake for the Sharks, number 239. And to finish off the box, Beau Fermor for the Titans. Alright. Five to go. box number 8. Game breakers, Mitchell Barnett for the Warriors. Luminous, Dylan Brown for the Knights. Die cuts, Jalen DeGroot for Titans. Excuse me. Finton Gutherson, Luminous for the Dragons. League heads, Payne Haas for the Broncos. Luminous, Ben Hunt for the Broncos. Game breakers, Brian Kelly for Titans. Luminous, Saya Yongi for the Eels. Instant win. Luminous, Jack Whiten for the Rabbitohs. Bang, Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Matt Burton for the Bulldogs. Game breakers, Damien Cook for the Dragons. Luminous, Jamie Chapman for the Titans. League heads, RTS for the Warriors. Luminous, Jerome Luai for the Tigers. Die cuts, Emery Agula for the Dragons. Luminous, Hudson Young for the Raiders. League heads, Adam Dewey for the Tigers. Luminous, Leka Halasima for the Warriors. Bailey Simonson, Bang for the Eels. Luminous, Hammer for the Dolphins. League heads, Xavier Coates for Storm. Luminous, Cohen Hess for Cowboys. Die cuts, Jamie Humphries for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Nico Hines for the Sharks. Game breakers, Yasmin Clydesdale for the Knights. Luminous, Lehe Hopawate for Manly. Red Triumph, Dane Gagai for the Knights. Luminous, Morgan Smithies for the Raiders. League Heads, Ethan Bullymore for Manly. Luminous, Dean Mariner for the Broncos. Bang, Tolatuakawala for Manly. Luminous, Isabel Kelly for the Roosters. League Heads, Campbell Graham for the Rabbitohs. And Nelson Asafa Solomona, Luminous for Storm. League Heads, Tommy Dearden for the Cowboys. Payne Huss, Luminous for the Broncos. Game Breakers, Jacob Carraz for Bulldogs. Luminous, Sebastian Chris for the Raiders. Bang, Fanua Pole for the Tigers. Luminous, Phoenix Crossland for the Knights. League Heads, Spencer Lanu for the Roosters. Luminous, Angus Crichton for the Roosters. Gladiators, Val Holmes for the Dragons, number 405. Luminous, Jaden Campbell for the Titans. Game Breakers, Keezy Apps for Tigers. Luminous, Taylor Preston for the Bulldogs. League Heads, Wade Egan for the Warriors. Luminous, Ethan Bullymore for Manly. Die Cuts, Game Breakers, Zaya Yo for Panthers. Luminous, Jesse Calhoun for the Sharks. Bang, Cody Walker for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Kurt Catewell for the Warriors. League Heads, Falago for Storm. Luminous, Campbell Graham for the Rabbitohs. Die cuts Bailey Haywood for the Bulldogs. Luminous Ruben Cotter for the Cowboys. Game breakers Jason Tormalolo. Luminous Dream Buller for the Tigers. Red Triumph Penrith Panthers. Luminous Xavier Coates for Storm. Mercury Junior Paulo for the Eels. Number 364. Luminous Herbie Farmworth for the Dolphins. League heads Morgan Smithies for the Raiders. Luminous Dylan Egan for the Dragons. 3 packets left for the box. Game breakers Junior Paulo for the Eels. Luminous Abby Church for the Eels. Bang Ali Latua for the Warriors. Luminous Spencer Lenu for the Roosters. And last pack for the box. League heads Mitch Kenny for Panthers, as well as Isaiah Yo for Panthers. Alright, tidy this box up and get stuck into the next. Alright, well that was box 8 and this is box number 9. Game breakers Mitchell Moses for the Eels. Luminous Tom Starling for the Raiders. League heads Lindsay Collins for the Roosters. Luminous Tamik Upton for the Broncos. Die cuts Clayton Forlalo for Manly. Luminous Jesse Ramian for the Sharks. Game breakers Latrell Mitchell for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Mitchell Barnett for the Warriors. Bang Chance Nico Klokstad for the Warriors. Luminous Ben Trebojevic for Manly. League heads Damien Cook for the Dragons. Sinua Taruva Luminous for Tigers. Mercury Botefernal for Titans, number 333. 333. Luminous Penasini for the Eels. Game Breakers, Joseph Tarpanay for the Raiders. Luminous, Jonah Pezzett for Storm. League Heads, Corey Horsburgh for the Raiders. Luminous, Matthew Tomoko for the Raiders. Bang, Matthew Tomoko for the Raiders. Luminous, Luke Metcalf for the Warriors. League Heads, John Bateman for the Cowboys. Luminous, Saratoga Tuki for the Tigers. Die Cuts, Lachlan Galvin for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Connolly Lumi Lou for Dolphins. Game Breakers, Tamir Martin for the Warriors. Samuel Stonestreet for the Sharks. I was trying to read that backwards and I read Jermaine Hewitt in my head. Red Triumph for the Dolphins. Luminous, Tanila Paseka for Manly. League Heads, Nathan Cleary for Panthers. Luminous, Sam Walker for the Roosters. Bang, Tommy Turbo for Manly. Luminous, John Bateman for the Cowboys. League Heads, Patrick Carrigan for the Broncos. Luminous, Jamin Salmon for the Bulldogs. Dally M. Luminous, Cam Munster for the Storm. Game Breakers, Cameron McInnes for the Sharks. Luminous, Ali Brigginshaw for the Broncos. Gladiators, Asaya Katoa for the Dolphins. Number 403. Jermaine Isako for the Dolphins. League heads, Jermaine Hopgood for the Eels. Luminous, Jerome Hughes for Storm. Bang, Brian To'o for Panthers. Luminous, Casey McLean for Panthers. Game Breakers, Fletcher Sharp for the Knights. Luminous, Chance Nico Klokstad for the Warriors. Die cuts, Kale Iro for the Sharks. Luminous, Ethan Sanders for the Raiders. League heads, Bradman Best for the Knights. Luminous, William Kennedy for the Sharks. Game Breakers, Val Holmes for the Dragons. Luminous, Saitili Tupanua for the Bulldogs. League heads, Blake Brayley for the Sharks. Luminous, Sean Russell for the Eels. Game Breakers, Lindsay Smith for Panthers. Luminous, Zali Hopkins for the Dragons. Bang, Jai Gray for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Kurt Mann for the Bulldogs. Nelson Asafa Solomona for the Storm. Luminous, Jermaine McEwen for Knights. Red Triumph, Chance Nico Klokstad for the Warriors. Luminous, Teddy for the Roosters. Game Breakers, Shaylee Bent for the Titans. Luminous, Max Plath for the Dolphins. League heads, Stephen Crichton for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Cameron Murray for the Rabbitohs. Die cuts, Xavier Coates for the Storm. Luminous, Regan Campbell Gillard for the Titans. 2 packets left in the box. 3 boxes to go. Bang, Jason Tormalolo for the Cowboys. Luminous, Jackson Purdue for the Cowboys. League heads, AJ Brimson for the Titans and Luminous Blaze Talagi for Panthers. Alright, that's that one done and dusted. How quick is that? Oh, we've got 3 to go now. Box number 10. When they just don't want to open cleanly. Bang, Ryan Pappenhausen for the Storm. Luminous AJ Brimson for the Titans. League heads, Hudson Young for the Raiders. Luminous Murata Nakor for the Warriors. Triumph Brighton Nickera for the Sharks. Luminous Moses Leota for Panthers. Game Breakers Blake Brayley for the Sharks. Luminous Jermaine Hopgood for the Eels. League heads Xavier Willison for the Broncos. Luminous Mackenzie Wheel for Cowboys. Game Breakers Brian Top for Panthers. Luminous Jaden Sewer for the Dragons. Bang, Zach Lomax for the Eels. Luminous Dylan Lucas for the Knights. Game Breakers Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs. Luminous Lachlan Galvin for the Bulldogs. League heads Sam Verrills for the Titans. Luminous Adam Reynolds for the Broncos. Die cuts Nico Hines for the Sharks. Luminous Hugo Savala for Roosters. League heads Chance Nicole Cockstad for the Warriors. Luminous Falago for Storm. Game Breakers Tamika Upton for the Broncos. Luminous Brendan Smith for Rabbitohs. Bang, Tommy Dearden for the Cowboys. Luminous Tamale for the Raiders. League heads, Ryan Pappenhausen for Storm. Luminous Emma Veron for Sharks. Dally M. Luminous Samola Fainu for the Tigers. League heads, Cody Nikarima for the Dolphins. Luminous Ray Stone for the Dolphins. Red Triumph for the Cowboys. Luminous Stephen Crichton for the Bulldogs. Game Breakers, Lachlan Elias for Dragons. Luminous Jamal Fogarty for Manly. Mercury Tom Starling for the Raiders, 166. Luminous Tommy Dearden for the Cowboys. Game Breakers, Ryan Pappenhausen for the Storm. Luminous Jai Arrow for the Rabbitohs. League heads, Connor Watson for the Roosters. Luminous Keanu Kinney for the Titans. Bang Leka Halasima for the Warriors. Luminous Kyle Flanagan for the Dragons. Game Breakers, Taylor Preston for the Bulldogs. Luminous Angelina for the Bulldogs. League head, Kurt Mann for the Bulldogs. Luminous Zach Lomax for the Eels. Die cuts Latu Fainu for Tigers. Luminous Nathan Cleary for Panthers. Bang Hammer for the Dolphins. Luminous Jamie Humphreys for the Rabbitohs. League heads, Alex Twal for Tigers. Luminous Billy Walters for the Broncos. Game Breakers, Zach Lomax for the Eels. Luminous Joseph Tarpanay for the Raiders. Gladiators, Blake Brayley for the Sharks, number 304. Luminous, Greg Mathews for the Knights. League Heads, Jack Whiten for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Kulikefu for the Dolphins. Die cuts, Ruben Cotter for the Cowboys. Luminous, Daniel Tupou for Roosters. Bang KO Weeks for Raiders. Luminous Appy Nichols for the Warriors. Fourth last packet for box number 10. League Heads, Braden Trindle for the Sharks. Luminous Carl Lawton for the Cowboys. Game Breakers, Phoenix Crossland for the Knights. Luminous Fanua Pole for Tigers. Die cuts, Zach Lomax for the Eels. Luminous Cameron McInnes for Sharks. League Heads, Stefano Utakamanu for Storm, and Luminous Trent Leroux for Storm. Alright, well, box 10 done and dusted. 2 to go. Alright, box number 11. Mercury, Luke Metcalf for the Warriors, number 322. Saratoga Tuki for Tigers. Bang Bailey Haywood for the Bulldogs. Luminous Connolly Loomy Lou for Dolphins. League Heads, Stephen Crichton for the Bulldogs. Luminous Samuel Stonestreet for the Sharks. Game Breakers, Big Tino for Titans. Luminous Tanila Paseka for Manly. League Heads, Luke Brooks for Manly. Luminous Sam Walker for the Roosters. Die cut Mitchell Moses for the Eels. Luminous John Bateman for the Cowboys. Game breakers Stephen Crichton for the Bulldogs. Luminous Jamin Salmon for the Bulldogs. League heads Mitchell Barnett for the Warriors. Luminous Cameron Munster for Storm. Bang Alifiana Canberra for Titans. Brian Kelly for the Titans. Game breakers Abby Church for the Eels. Luminous Bailey Simonson for the Eels. Red Triumph Bradman Best for the Knights. Luminous Jesse Southwell for the Knights. League heads Damien Cook for the Dragons. Luminous Luciano Leilua for the Dragons. Game breakers Luciano Leilua for the Dragons. Luminous Katoni Staggs for the Broncos. Die cut Xavier Savage for the Raiders. Luminous Asaya Papali'i for Panthers. League heads Herbie Farmworth for the Dolphins. Luminous Jacob Carraz for the Bulldogs. Game breakers Ali Latua for the Warriors. Luminous Alex Sifa for Tigers. Bang Jason Saab for Manly. Luminous Keon Kolomatangi for the Rabbitohs. League heads Jai Arrow for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Ali Latua for the Warriors. League heads John Bateman for the Cowboys. Luminous James Tedesco for the Roosters. Bang Kalen Ponga for the Knights. Luminous Max Plath for Dolphins. Game Breakers, Tamale for the Raiders. Luminous, Cameron Murray for the Rabbitohs. League Heads, Jermaine Hopgood for Eels. Luminous, Regan Campbell Gillard for the Titans. Die cuts, Valami Kickout for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Jackson Purdue for Cowboys. League Heads, AJ Brimson for Titans. Luminous, Blaze Salagi for Panthers. Red Triumph for the Titans. Luminous, Tom Starling for the Raiders. League Heads, Dream Abula for Tigers. Luminous, Tamika Upton for Broncos. Game Breakers, Dane Gagai for the Knights. Luminous, Jesse Ramian for the Sharks. Bang, Scott Drinkwater for the Cowboys. Luminous, Mitchell Barnett for the Warriors. League Heads, Nathan Cleary for Panthers. Luminous, Ben Trebojevic for Manly. Die cuts, Dominic Young for the Knights. Luminous, Sanua Taruva for Tigers. We're down to 6 packs left for box number 11. League Heads, Lindsay Collins for the Roosters. Luminous, Will Penasini for the Eels. Bang, Jack Bostock for Dolphins. Luminous, Jonah Pezzett for Storm. Gladiators, Asaya Iongi for the Eels, number 324. Luminous, Matthew Tomoko for the Raiders. Game Breakers, Daniel Tupou for the Roosters. Luminous, Luke Metcalf for the Warriors. And Dally M, Jordan Ricky for the Broncos in the Luminous. And last pack for the box. Game breakers, Angus Crichton for the Roosters. Luminous, Jessica Surgis for the Roosters. Alright, let's just slide these ones out of our way and get stuck into box number 12. Alright, here we go. Last box of the case. League heads, Jason Saab for Manly. Luminous, Taylor Preston for the Bulldogs. Bang, Jack Whiten for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Ethan Blimore for Manly. Game breakers, Alefiana Campiera for Titans. Luminous, Jesse Colquhoun for the Sharks. Die cuts, Dylan Edwards for Panthers. Luminous, Kurt Capewell for the Warriors. League heads, Robert Toya for the Roosters. Luminous, Campbell Graham for the Rabbitohs. Game breakers, Tyson Frizzell for the Knights. Luminous, Reuben Cotter for Cowboys. Bang, Bradman Best for the Knights. Luminous, Jareem Buller for Tigers. League heads, Jacob Little for the Dragons. Luminous, Xavier Coates for Storm. Game breakers, Tanila Paseka for Manly. Luminous, Herbie Farnworth for Dolphins. Mercury Fanua Pole for the Tigers, number 377. Luminous, Dylan Egan for the Dragons. League heads, Alefiana Campiera for Titans. Luminous, Abby Church for the Eels. Bang, Xavier Savage for the Raiders. Luminous, Spencer Lenu for the Roosters. Game breakers, Liam Martin for Panthers. Luminous, Isaiah Yo for Panthers. League heads, Joseph Tarpanay for the Raiders. Luminous, Dylan Brown for the Knights. Die cuts Zach Hosking for the Raiders. Luminous Clint Gutherson for the Dragons. League heads Jeremiah Nanai for the Cowboys. Luminous Ben Hunt for the Broncos. Game breakers Adam Fanua Blake for the Sharks. Luminous Saya Yongi for the Eels. It's been a while. Luminous Jack Whiten for the Rabbitohs. Red Triumph Joseph Tarpanay for the Raiders. Luminous Sam Verrills for the Titans. League heads Brian Top for Panthers. Luminous Bradman Best for the Knights. Game breakers Loco Tonga for the Dragons. Luminous Junior Paulo for the Eels. League heads KO Weeks for the Raiders. Luminous Felice Kafusi for the Dolphins. Bang Lachlan Galvin for the Bulldogs. Luminous Ethan Strange for the Raiders. League head Terrell May for Tigers. Luminous Lachlan Ilias for the Dragons. Gladiators Luke Brooks for Manly, number 473. Luminous Billy Smith for the Roosters. Game breakers Jerome Hughes for Storm. Luminous Max King for the Bulldogs. Bang Renato Militalo for the Sharks. Luminous Lyshan Albert Jones for the Warriors. League heads Cameron Murray for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Reese Walsh for the Broncos. Die cuts Kurt Catewell for the Warriors. Luminous Tolator Koala for Manly. Game breakers, Cooley Kefu for the Dolphins. Luminous, Dylan Edwards for Panthers. Red Triumph for the Dragons. Luminous Payne Huss for the Broncos. What have we got? 5 packets left for the box. Then we get to go through these hits on the table before we have a break and come back with the starters case. Cameron Munster for Storm. Luminous Sebastian Chris for the Raiders. Bang Dylan Edwards for Panthers. Luminous Phoenix Crossland for the Knights. Game breakers, Mahalia Murphy for the Eels. Luminous Angus Crichton for Roosters. Die cut Jack Bostock for the Dolphins. Luminous Jaden Campbell for the Titans. And here we go, last pack. League heads, Max King for the Bulldogs. And Matt Burton, Luminous for the Bulldogs. Alright, back to the beginning. Clive Churchill, number 167 for the Panthers. Definitely one of the ones that you want to have. Congrats, Craig Milson. Alright. 153 Premiership Predictor for the Dragons. Next up, Golden Triumph number 70 for the Raiders. I think that's the second Gold Triumph in a row. I'm pretty sure the last one was the number 1 Sebastian Chris. Alright, instant win. Another big one for this team. Panthers. Clive Churchill and instant win for Panthers there. Alright, next up, Daly M Predictor number 96. This one is for Stephen Crichton with the Bulldogs. Blow my nose. Alright, next up, another Daly M. I thought it was number 52. Teddy for the Roosters. Alright, 2 to go. Can't wait to get to that last one. I tell you what. Number 141, and with the position of this person on the Dally M board before we went to Origin, definitely in with a good chance. Another one for the Panthers, Dylan Edwards. Obviously Cleary, Edwards, and Ford were our top 3 prior to Origin. Round 12. Alright, Golden Treasure, number 6 for the Warriors, Peter Lowe. Congratulations. It's been a while since we've had a Golden Treasure. Always good to see one come out. There we go. Alright guys, that is it for part 1 of the break. We'll be back in about half an hour or thereabouts with the rest of the break, which is the starters case as well as the bonuses that get randomised at the end. Ooh, bit of a back jolt there. Alright, until then guys.